Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today I have a couple really fun techniques for you. First, I'm going to show you how to use your mini ink pads to make rainbow ink pads so you can do some really fun brayer techniques. We're going to work on glossy cardstock, but I'm also going to show you some different alternatives if you don't have that. And we're going to have some fun. This is a really great technique to know in case you've wanted some rainbow ink pads but you can't find them, or they're just too expensive, or you just don't have room for another ink pad. So it's just another way to use it. Now, we're going to be working on glossy stuff, so I'm going to just apologize in advance for any glare that we encounter because it's very difficult to film glossy things. This video is brought to you by Rubber Stamp Tapestry. You can find them at pegstamps.com, and they actually have a couple different deals going on this week. You can pick whichever one meets your needs best. Of course, you can use Lindsay17, that coupon code, to save 20% on your peg stamp order, but if you're not getting peg stamps, or you just are buying a bunch of random stuff, you can get a free stamp set. They have a beautiful stamp set on their website. I believe it's called Veranda, and that's a coupon code too, but I'm going to type it out in the video description so we make sure we get it right. But they're giving that stamp set away with a $50 purchase. So they've got all these wonderful little ink pads, the Versamark, a lot of wonderful craft supplies at really great prices. So it's just a way to get a different little goodie. So we're going to start right off. We're going to use some glossy cardstock, and this is different than photo paper, but I know you guys are going to ask me about photo paper, so I did try it on photo paper as well, this technique we're going to do, and it does work. It's different, of course, because it's a different paper, but we're going to go into that. And I also tried it on regular cardstock, and it worked okay a little bit. It wasn't anything to write home about, quite frankly. So what we're going to do is get right into it. I feel like I've been talking for like 10 minutes now. We're finally going to get into it. So first technique I want to share with you is a resist technique. And I feel so scattered today. I'm so sorry. So a resist basically is something you put down on your paper to repel either ink or paint or something you're going to put on top, basically. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can use a Versamark pen, which has kind of like an oily liquid in it. And here I wrote the word hello, and then I brayered over it with ink and wiped it. And then, you know, you can see the word hello light, and you see the inked background. This was white glossy cardstock. Here I wrote the word love with my Versamark pen, and then I stamped with Versamark ink and brayered over that. And you can see that the stamped ink pad does resist more than the pen, but the pen's a nice alternative. But then I wondered, geez, I wonder about my sentiment stamps, how that would work. And I didn't know because they're such a dainty script, but actually that worked really well too. So I'm a big fan of the Versmark pad for this. I even have a resist ink pad that I don't think works as well. I've tried it and never had really reliable results, but every sample I've done with the Versamark has worked out really well. So you can try whatever embossing ink you have, and if it doesn't work that great, then just you could pick up an inexpensive tiny cube of this if you don't want to invest in a large ink pad. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is how to make your rainbow ink pad. So it's pretty simple. You just take 3 or 4 colors, depends on how wide your brayer is. Basically, if you have a wider brayer, use more ink pads. You just want to put your ink pads together on the table and keep the lids nearby. I try to keep them kind of like nearby, lined up with the color that they represent, so I don't get confused and put the wrong cover on. But a lot of times they tell you the name on the bottom of the pads, or like on these mementos they have a little tab there. So as long as you don't smear that with ink, then you'll know what color you have. And then you want to prepare your card, and this is glossy cardstock that I cut ATC size, which is 2.5 by 3.5, and you can get 10 from one 8.5 by 11 sheet of glossy cardstock. A tip, if you can't find glossy cardstock, a lot of times your print shops will have it, like your photo and copy shops, and it's sold under the name Kromecote. So if you can't find it, look for Kromecote or ask your local copy shop. And when I bought a bunch of it, it was cheaper at my copy shop than it was at like a stamp supplier. But even at stamp suppliers, it is getting a little bit trickier to find these days. So I'm going to stamp right in the middle. Glossy cardstock's a little slipperier to stamp on, so keep that in mind, okay? All right, and I don't know if I tip it, maybe you can see, I don't know if you can see, but I've got that clear ink in there, and I can just make it out. And then I prefer to use bold images. I really think bold images work best for this technique, so I'm using the Sunny Daisy set, which contains 3 jumbo peg stamps. And I'm going to stamp my biggest stamp first, which is the big daisy. I'm going to stamp this like 3 times. You want to be careful, like, too, if you have any lotions on your fingers, because that will leave fingerprints and leave a resist, which you probably didn't intend. Which makes me think, you know what, guys, if you had maybe a little glycerin or something and just smeared it on your stamp, or a little microglaze, or any sort of like waxy things, maybe even some home decor wax or something, and you smeared that on your stamp, you might get a very similar effect. So have fun, guys. You know, always try what you have first, and then if you don't have it, if you don't have the right thing to work, then go and buy. Oh, I did grab some poster putty, because remember how much my ink pad was bouncing around last week? I'm like, I found some of this. I'm gonna stick that down to my my table there. That might help my situation. It might help my cause, who knows. Probably could use more of it. And I'm just gonna put a few leaves around my daisies. So the bolder images just show up better, because we're going to end up with kind of like a batik look. I think I'll also put another little leaf over here. And then we've got this other little element in the Sunny Daisy set. Now, since this one is definitely directional, I want the stem to be off the edge of the paper, so I just want to make sure that that little mark on the side is kind of hanging off over the edge when I stamp it. So other than that, it's pretty simple. Pretty simple stamping here. Okay, so then what you want to do is let this dry. You can actually use a heat tool for this, but you know what? I also want to show you this technique on glossy photo paper, so I'm just going to let this dry on its own. I've had, like, it seems like with the other resist pads that I've used, you had to be really perfect on the amount of time you let it dry, and then how long you let the ink sit. It just seemed like there was so many variables, and I just didn't feel like there were many variables with this. I feel like it comes out great almost every time. Just, you know, of course you got to stamp things lined up. I'm not doing a very good job on this photo paper stamping. I'm kind of missing the mark, but you'll be able to see the effect, and that's the important thing. Poster putty, though, that's a game changer. I'm just going to stamp this a couple times just so you can see the different types of stamp and how they react. I'm just going to stamp this friendship down there too, so you'll be able to see that. Okay, now with a photo paper, you actually don't want to let it dry. You want to be as quick as you can, because the coating on that paper is going to make it dry quicker than you want it to. So I just put those ink pads together. Now you could tack them down or put a strip of tape down or something to hold them if they feel like they're dancing around. I found that as long as they're not on a slippery tabletop, they're going to work pretty good. And as I am inking, I'm kind of like looking and seeing if I have gaps. If I have gaps, I'm just like shifting it over a little bit while I ink up, just to get ink pretty much everywhere. And then when I roll it on my design, I'm going to go across, lift up, go across, lift up, and I'm just kind of overlapping. I'm going like to the edge a little bit each time, so that I hopefully don't leave too much of a hard line in between the colors. Now the thing about doing it on the photo paper, as you're seeing, is that I'm getting pretty harsh division. The colors aren't blending as well. The ink is resisting where I stamped it fine, but you know, you might actually be better off just doing a solid color if you're going to do photo paper, or getting one of those ink pads that actually have all the colors kind of melding into each other that aren't separated at all. But it will work, and this is the one I did with the Ginkgo. I think the Ginkgo looked a little bit nicer, but you know, you definitely can do it with that. But it works a lot better when you do it on the glossy cardstock. I know that wasn't that stunning, but you could practice with it and get pretty good at it, and I just wanted to give that option out there, because I know a lot of you guys have a lot of leftover photo paper, because anytime I use Yupo or glossy paper, everyone asks me about photo paper. I get asked probably once a day about photo paper, or like, what do I do with leftover photo paper, or can I use leftover photo paper for this? So I just wanted to make sure that I tried that for you. Oh, the only thing I want to warn you about photo paper, don't use high quality clear stamps on photo paper, because they could stick. I've ruined a stamp that way. So if you got the expensive clear stamps, avoid the photo paper. You will ruin them. So now that feels like it's still a little wet. I'm going to blast it real quick with the heat tool. That's a nice thing about working on the glossy cardstock, is that you don't have to rush. And I'm just going to leave this in because I want you to see how long it takes. Not very long, a couple seconds. And I'm just going to brayer over this. So lift up. You can already see how much better this is going to blend than it did on the other paper. See how I'm getting a really pretty ombre effect? And the reason for this is simply because the glossy cardstock will let the ink be wet and will let it move a little bit. That's why I had to make sure that my ink underneath was dry, otherwise I would just smear it across. Okay, so that's why that's working. Now, another thing I need to do, because that ink is still wet, I need to let this dry for a minute, or I need to zap it real quick with a heat tool. So I'll just do this really quick, because if I don't, I'm going to end up rubbing off a lot of that ink. And then I'm going to take a tissue, just a dry tissue, and look, you can rub off the ink that's on top of the design, and the rest of the ink just sticks to the paper where there was no resist ink. All right, look at that. I think that's really fun looking. Now, if I let it sit longer, then maybe some of the ink would stain the white. But if I wiped it off too quick, I wouldn't get as dramatic a result. I'd get more of a faded result like that because I end up wiping so much of the ink off of the paper when I do that. So I thought I would show you this too, because I have another technique for doing the pads if you find this a little too unwieldy. So the other thing that I did was I used my poster putty and I tacked it to a stamp block. So that way I would have my ink pads ready to go and I wouldn't have to worry about them moving around, because I honestly thought I was going to have more trouble than I did. So you need to clean your brayer between colors or you're going to contaminate your ink pad. So to clean it, you can rinse it under the sink, but what I usually do is just wipe it with a baby wipe. Get it good and clean. I usually will go over again. Now, it's okay if your brayer gets stained. I actually have one that I just use for black ink because that stains so badly and I can't see if I have it inked up very well. And then I have this one that I use for whatever other color. And I even have one that I use just for paint because the paint does get a little crusty on there after a while. And then I just roll it on my under paper here. This is just from the Dollar Tree. It's just that, you know, kids drawing in newsprint. It's so awesome to work on. And once I feel like it's pretty dry, not going to worry about the stain because I know it's clean, then I can use it with my next project. So for the Ginkgo Leaves, I really like this design. And by the way, all the stamps I'm using are from Rubber Stamp Tapestry. Of course, if you tack your ink pad down, it wants to stick to your table. So that's kind of funny. If I'm using peg stamps, I generally push the stamp onto the pad. If I'm using a wood-mounted or a clear stamp that I have on a block, I tend to pick up the pad and tap it to that. So I just wanted to mention that because if you got your start in stamping with peg stamps and then you went to get, bigger ones and you're trying to go, it's very awkward and you can miss areas when you're trying to ink up your stamp like that. You'll notice that this ink grabs the paper quite a bit. And I'm going to link all of the supplies over to Rubber Stamp Tapestry so that you can find them and I'll put the coupon code information too so you can get a good deal. Well, it's always a good deal, but you can get better deal, even better. There we go. So we can see well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm not sure if that will show for you or not, but I can just barely make out that there is there's a little tint there. They used to make tinted embossing ink. I'm not sure if they still do or not. I'm going to give this a little blast. And you know what, I'll also use the embossing pen so you can see the Versamark pen. Because I know some of you guys got these to work with chalk, so let me just write a word. We'll do howdy. We'll write howdy and we'll write hello. So that you can see both. I've got the thin and the thick tip. I'm just going to let that set aside to dry while we brayer on this ink. I think it's nice to see variables. That way when you go ahead to do your project, you're not, and the nice thing about this though, I can hold the block down with my hand while I'm brayering. I really like this actually. I had turned around the other way when I was doing it before. What was I thinking? This is so much easier. Okay folks, this is how you do it. You use your poster putty and you stick it to a block. And it seems like it's easier for me to get a more uniform inking up too. Alright, so here I am just going to roll over, lift up, go next door, roll over, lift up, keep doing that. Just want to make sure that I overlap a little bit so that I get a really nice blend. Oh, it's so pretty. Now, if you had to go buy an Ombre ink pad, and I know because I've been looking for those Kaleido color pads because I have a bunch and they're really cool, but I've seen them, they're like 15, 20 bucks when I find them. It's crazy. Even more if it's like a discontinued color. So I just like that I can do it on my own. So we gotta let that ink set in for a minute. And while that's setting in, let's grab this right here. The pen doesn't have as much oil in it, I think, so it doesn't seem like I have to dry it, and if I let it dry too much, it seems like it kind of fades away. So with the pen, I would definitely try to go right in. I wouldn't heat set it. I don't think you need to heat set it. So by just always, and I don't go back and forth, I go over, pick it up, come back, over, pick it up, come back. And that, I've always heard that keeps from picking up the ink on your paper. It just makes sure you keep laying it down instead of picking it up. I don't know how true it is, but I do seem like I get a better blend when I do it that way. So that's the way I do it. And let's grab tissues, and there we go. I don't think I'm wiping too much off the background, but it's coming off the resist. And some colors just stain more too, like purples and reds, they just stain more, so it would stand to reason they would stain your paper a little bit more. Because like, I mean, I got more green off on my rag than I did when I did the purple. And then we'll just wipe off this guy. I probably should have let him set a little bit more, but I'm a little nervous with the pen because it seems like if I let the pen sit too much, then it sinks in too much like it did on the Love. I heat set that one, and you can see how nice and bright the flowers are, but the Love got very faded because I heat set it and I think it dried out the pen too much. This one I didn't heat set and it's nice and bright, and those were also kind of like reddy purpley colors. So, you know, the pen will work on the glossy cardstock fine. It just, you know, you got to work it a little bit faster because there's not as much oil in the pen. So I thought it might be fun to take some of these little samples and make up a couple little cards, nothing fancy, but I think it's nice to have little cards handy on your, like, you know, on your desk. If, you know, somebody does something nice and you want to send a quick thank you card, it's nice to have them. Make sure you cap up your ink pads when you're done so they don't dry out on you. And, you know, you can get re-inkers for all of these memento pads. I buy these tiny pads, and then I get the re-inkers, so I can refill them as many times as I want. So it's very affordable if you do that. So if your pad goes dry, just make a list of re-inkers that you need, and the next time you're somewhere where you can find them, where you can buy them, then you can get them. I'm not sure if Rubber Stamp Tapestry carries the re-inkers as well. Oftentimes it's like the bigger stores that have the big box kind of online places that have those. But I die cut a few of these little frames, and I thought it might be kind of fun just to use those. It might be fun to struggle with my glue on camera because that's always a good time for all. And you know what? In fact, I think what I'm going to do is actually lay out some of these and kind of figure what I want to do. And then maybe glue them down off camera because I'm kind of a klutz when it comes to glue. And I also thought that because I had these insides left over from my die cutting, that I could use some of these beautiful sentiment stamps and maybe just make a bunch of thank you cards up ahead of time. Or there's thinking of you, which is really nice. And there is a nice thank you, but I don't think I have I think the thinking of you is nice because you don't have to be thanking somebody to do a thinking of you. You could do it just for any reason, and I think cards that are unexpected, that are, you know, are really nice. So what I think I'm going to do is just match the color inks that I've used. So I'll do a couple of these greens. I should probably grab my pad again because that will give me a nice cushy surface, because I don't put foam on these typically. I just don't. I just put the glue on the back. The aliens tack it over and over, glue on the back, and call it good. And then I'm going to do a couple in the purple, I think. Let's do this grape jelly. I think that's the color I used. Let's clean off the stamp first, Lindsay. Golly, that's not a good idea to stamp with a dirty stamp. Been keeping my brayer clean. That'd be sad if I couldn't keep my stamp pad clean. Alright, what I'm going to do is just trim those out and notch the ends so I have like a little ribbon, and then I'm going to layer these cards up and I'll show you how they came out, because really it's just me gluing die cuts down. It's nothing fancy. So this is the basic card design I'm going to do for all of the glossy backgrounds I made, and I just figured it wasn't worth showing you all 4 of them because I don't have them made yet, but I'll show them to you on my blog in a day or two, and then just a little stamping to dress up the envelope to go with it, and I think that would be a lovely little greeting to get in the mail. I hope you give this technique a try. It makes these little ink pads even more useful. We already knew they were useful, and now this makes them more so. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy crafting!